everybody. We are so honored to have a very exciting workshop today on telling your story about dark skies. And you all came incredibly highly recommended from Jen Martin, who gave us also great presentation on presentations, which is not an easy thing to do. So we've been really looking forward to this ever since her recommendation, and cannot thank you all enough for sharing your time and wisdom and expertise with the dark sky movement. As you can see, we have a lot of fun, passionate, excited people about dark skies from all over the world. And if you haven't already, please pop in the chat a hello with where you're calling in from today. It's always really fun to see where people are around the world. I am calling in from headquarters here in Tucson, Arizona, after being in Chile for a month, so adjusting to be back, but lovely to see everyone again. And if I have missed getting back to you, please just reach out to me again. And I really look forward to hearing from everyone and getting back in the swing of things. So today we have a couple of amazing presenters. I'll start with Matthew David. Let me find him here, and I'm going to spotlight your video here while I read your introduction. So Matthew David has studied improv, sketch comedy, acting, stand-up comedy, filmmaking, and screenwriting at various schools around Los Angeles. He's worked with several producers in creating feature film and TV pilot scripts. Since 2020, he's been working with Dr. Randy Olson in operating and teaching the ABT framework course to students from a variety of disciplines, including biologists, Pfizer scientists, leadership at the World Bank, engineers at the FAA, coral reef biologists, and ocean conservationists, to name a few. Matthew hopes to save the world through narrative training. I love that. I used to always tell people I wanted to save the world. So I'm glad you haven't lost your passion for that.
Not yet.
We'll move on to Randy Olson here. So it sounds like Dr. Randy Olson is a scientist turned filmmaker and the author of 10 books on communication. His documentary feature film, The Flock of Dodos, The Evolution Intelligent Design Circus, premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival and aired for 2 years on Showtime. His book writing began in 2009 with Don't Be Such a Scientist, Talking Substance in an Age of Style. His most recent film as a producer is the 2019 documentary feature film, White Rhino, Big Waves, Surfing's Biggest Year, which is available on Amazon Prime. His favorite things to do in his spare time are surf big waves on the California coast and get yelled at by his dog. I love that. And welcome, Randy, welcome, Matthew, and welcome, Devo, as well. I'll go ahead and spotlight you too. And you all can take it away from here.
Wonderful. All right. Let's see. I will run things for a little bit here, get some intro for you. This seems like a happy, friendly, fun group. Unlike some groups of scientists that we work with that are seriously staring down the barrel at us and holding us accountable on every little detail. So yeah, that's part of why I agreed to do this thing with you, is that actually the last 16 years I've been living in Malibu, California, and this little town here has got a pretty active program about night skies, and that's why we're bringing in Devo to take over on that. So we're going to go from the general to the specific, which actually is your first basic rule in communication. You know, you want to communicate really well, you generally want to go from the general to the specific. You want to give people a general idea what you're going to talk about before you start diving into all the specifics. And a lot of time in these presentations, this is what I do. I partner a lot with people from different disciplines, because the ABT framework is this very powerful and broad tool that applies to every discipline in the world. So, for example, we've got a series of books with our guy from the business world, and our guy from the politics world, and our guy from the law world, and 2 women scientists for science, and on and on. And right now I'm just finishing a new version of it for the medical world. But over and over again, we start off with me presenting the general model, and then we bring in the specialist to take it to each discipline. So in this particular instance today, I will be giving you the general model, and then Devo is going to work with you on the specifics, because he knows your topic better than I do, and even have some things to relate to from about around here. So let's see. Let's begin with a few slides here I will use to supplement what I have to say. And, you know, by the way, anybody that wants to jump in with any comments, questions, thoughts as we go along, I will not be offended at all if you want to just blurt out something. So because this seems like a fairly informal group. And on that note, let's see if I do this and this. and then this, and then hopefully, whoops, this and this. We have got that. Are we looking good with this slide?
Looks perfect.
Yay. Okay. ABT framework for communication. So, yeah, this is my background. I was a scientist, marine biologist once upon a time. Actually spent a lot of years in Australia working, studying the Great Barrier Reef, and then got so interested in communication and was so mystified by why scientists are so utterly bad at communication that I figured I'd go off and get a deeper background in communication itself, and ended up leaving a tenured professorship at age 38 and going to film school at the University of Southern California, and spent 3 years in the film production program, got out, and then began making films all around the place, and then eventually circled back to the science world with a series of books. Let's see, actually, here's the set of books. The very first one I wrote was in 2009, titled Don't Be Such a Scientist, and it was a critique of the science communication, pointing out some of the major problems that scientists have when they get involved with communication. Only as I got ready to publish it, my older brother's a lawyer, and he read it and he said, you know, you could write this same book and title it Don't Be Such a Lawyer. And turns out all these different disciplines have got their downside of people getting so caught up in the weeds of their own technical information that nobody can understand what in the world they're talking about. As a result, you see in the sequence of books there, the second one over there in the top row, the Houston, We Have a Narrative, ended up being the beginnings of offering up a solution. So I identified the problems in that first book, Don't Be Such Scientists. It got nice reviews, but after a while, people began to say, nice book, but all you really did was critique us to pieces. You know, you didn't give us an answer how to fix things. And then through the grace of the gods, I was handed this ABT tool in 2011 that I began to realize was something pretty powerful as I put it together. And now the last 12 years have really been blazing a path with the ABT. And we're actually, this past year, we're really gaining full momentum and getting wide scale recognition of people seeing how powerful it is. And as a result, you see these other books, starting with the one in the middle there, the Narrative Gym, that came out of the course that we do. And then we started doing a whole series for each discipline. Our business guy said, nice book, but unless I put business on the cover of my business, people won't read it. So as I said, each of these books then follows this template where I present the general model and then they take it into the specifics of their field. And let's see, this is the new incoming medicine in about 2 or 3 weeks. We're just putting the final touches on that one. And back here is, we did one form of training for about 5 years, and then the pandemic hit and we couldn't do it in person anymore. So we came up with this internet version of it through Zoom. And we offered it in April 2020, just to see if anybody's interested. And of course, everybody was stuck indoors there at the start of the pandemic, and everybody jumped in. And the result was that it fits inside of a month, pretty much, the 10 1-hour sessions that we do. And so you can see we've iterated it now over and over and over and over and over again. No one has ever put together a communications course like this with 20 people associated with it and had it evolve over time. With each of these iterations, it's gotten better and better and better and more powerful. And we've added on more people. And now you see that we're just actually in less than an hour, we will be starting the first session for Emory Medical School. We ran it with them last fall, and now it's officially a course with the medical school there, the ABT framework. And these are all the different groups. Boom, 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 boom. I don't know what that is. Okay. And so let's see, there's 2 main ways to present information. And that's, I assume, what you guys are interested in, is trying to get some of the facts and details across about the issue that you're involved with. And so, boom, there's first off the default non-narrative way. And this is what everybody does right off the top of your head, which we've labeled as the end structure. And that just means you just get up and you just regurgitate all the information, you know, and you need to know about this, and you need to know about this, you need to know about this. It's the way people communicate all day long. And the good news is it's very easy to do. Bad news is it's really the source of a lot of boredom and confusion, is when you just haven't given any thought to how you're going to structure the information. People get lost in it and they don't understand, why is this important? What does it relate to me? Good communication takes a lot of time, thought, and effort. But if you put in that time, thought, and effort, it pays off by people really getting it, what you're talking about. And at the core of doing a good job communicating is getting beyond this flat line, just and here's all the facts and information, and actually finding your way into the structure of it through this form of this and button therefore template, which we're going to talk about in a lot of detail and kind of iterate several times. And the basic structure is really no more complicated than just setup, problem, and solution. Turns out that's at the core of effective communication, is just the ability to set up a context, what we're talking about here, identify one main problem ideally, and then explain what actions are being taken to address that problem. And then within that overarching structure, embedding sort of sub elements as well, using the same ABT structure. But it's this 3-part structure that is age old, and it's been there all along. The problem is in the past 100 years, everybody's gotten so smart that they've gone and complicated everything in how we communicate and lost a lot of this simple structure here. But this is where it all begins, is trying to get back to the simple core of everything. And at, when you get lost in the project that you're doing, this is what you always want to revert back to is, what's our basic problem? It all begins with the problem. There's a quote from the business world that we cite a lot where a guy said, nobody buys a solution without a problem. So it all begins by getting everybody to agree on what's the problem over and over again. Debo will talk about this, just getting clear on what is our problem. And once you know what the problem is, then that guides you backwards to set it up. And then that guides you into what the actions are you going to take. So let me show you this one little clip here that is only about a minute. It's an excerpt from the larger video that we have, but it gives you a little bit of the science behind what we're talking about here. And let me know if there's any technical problems, but I hope I clicked the audio thing and you can hear it all right. Let's see what happens. Shed some light on this. For example, Yuri Hassan of Princeton University uses functional MRI to study the brain activity of people watching films. One group watches films that don't tell a story. For this, they use video footage of random people at a park. There's no problem-solution dynamic at work. This is what AAA is. Here's some kids, and there's some trees, and there's a trash can, and nothing to focus on, really. With no story, 2 things are seen in the brain scans of viewers: very little activity and very little similarity in which parts of the brain are active from one person to another. The index of similarity is low, around 10 to 20%. One person is watching a car drive by, another might be watching people. Then they use footage from suspense stories. This is high narrative content, very clearly problem solution material. He's got a gun, but it's pointed at someone. Therefore, we may be about to see something bad. Not surprisingly, there's lots of brain activity, and the index of similarity is around 70%, as everyone is thinking the same thought. Will he pull the trigger? This is the power of narrative. The problem solution. Okay, so what's meant there with the power of narrative is basically trying to draw on the power of problem solving, the problem solution dynamic. That's where the power of communication comes. When you can activate people's brains around a problem, that's when everybody's thinking really hard. When you're just presenting a bunch of information to them, they're like, why do we need this? But when you identify a problem and almost are asking, how would you solve this? Everybody goes to work trying to think how to solve it. And now you've got something good going. That's what detective stories are all about, just age-old storytelling. And the way to get to this structure that will work for you is through narrative development and to try and find this ABT structure. And the process is basically trying to take all the information that you've got that you want to communicate and shaping it into a cylinder rather than a square peg, because everybody's brains have got these kind of receptors that are looking for cylinders to slide in. And if all you do is just take all the information, all you're doing is trying to cram these square pegs into their brains. So that's what you get with AAA, is it's a square peg. You need to shape it into the ABT form so it will slide in people's brains smoothly. And the important thing here is that the communication splits into 2 main elements, which is you've got the content. That's the information that you want to communicate. And you can think of in this image as being like the wood. And then you've got the form, which is the shape of how you put it together. And so we talk endlessly about your content versus your form. And when it comes to Matt, myself, and even Debo, even though he's had a little bit of involvement with your issue, we really don't have the depth of the issue. So we're not experts on your content. And this is what goes on all the time with this training that we do. You saw all those lists of organizations we work with. Most of those organizations, number one, I don't have any idea. I have no background in their expertise. We work with everybody from astronomers to the World Bank and to Pfizer and yada, yada, all these epidemiologists, which I don't know their field at all. In fact, I often have to cut them off and say, I don't want to hear all the information of what you do. I know that's really important and great to you, but we're just here to work with you. The second part there, the form, how to pull that together. And it turns out if you just understand these elements, you can help anybody with what they're wanting to say and just trying to get that form to make it optimal. So that's the template, this and button therefore, and you can try it out on it works for anything and everything. It's a story of a little girl on a farm in Kansas, and her life is boring, but then one day a tornado takes her to the land of Oz. Therefore, she's got to find her way home. That's the ABT structure under the Wizard of Oz, and every good story's got that there. And then when you start to look at this structure, there's two levels you can look at it. First is the primary level, and that's probably what we're going to mostly deal with today, because it takes the 10 levels to get a lot deeper. But even at the primary level, once you just see these three elements and start to think in these terms, you're already communicating more effectively, because you're giving the setup, you're trying to find the problem and lead us on a journey towards the solution. But then there's a deeper level to it, which we've now identified and we call the secondary level, and which is that each of these elements here subdivides into at least two elements, and that's where it starts to get more challenging like this, but also more powerful. And so when you look at this, the blue material, the setup, how you start up, the things you want to address are what we call the ordinary world, which is just basically what is it we're talking about. You want to set up from the very beginning before you even identify the problem. What's at stake? Why does this matter? Why do we care if the night skies are this way or that way, or the amount of light being emanated is here and there? And a lot of work needs to go into that. What's at stake? Why should we care? And people are always hitting you with that question, whether they say it or not. It's in their mind. Like, it's nice that you're doing all this stuff, but why should I care? And it's up to you to really think that through and articulate it a lot. The reason that you really should be concerned about this is that these are all the things that, could impact you. Then when you get into the statement of the problem, you've got the simple statement of, but these programs aren't happening. And you want to hit that really quickly. And then you want to get into deeper depth with all the details of it. And then you give the actions. And this is Debo's going to work with you on that sort of stuff. There's one last video I want to show here, and then I'm going to hand it over. I'll say a few words about who Debo is and hand it over to him. We work a lot now with the World Bank and development projects around the world, particularly in Asia. And last September, they brought me to Nepal, where they had a couple of retreat workshops there, and I worked with them. And you see the guy in the plaid shirt there in the back row is one of their top program directors. And he, the first morning, instantly got it on the ABT and took off like a rocket. And over the next few months, every time he does a site visit in all these different countries through Asia, he ends up doing a 90-second to 2-minute video, which we've got a dozen of them posted on our website, that he uses the ABT structure to tell what's going on there. And so the very first one that he did, I decided to turn into this video. It's about 4 minutes long, and it's pretty nice. It shows you how to apply the ABT for a particular instance. So let's show this thing, and then I'll come back on then and start to hand it over to Debo. Here we go. Hi there. We run a communications training program built around the ABT framework. The ABT stands for and, but, therefore, a single sentence template to lock in the narrative core of your material. Here's a sample ABT. Effective communication is essential and narrative structure is at its core, but it can take time to learn. Therefore, you need to work on it. In the fall of 2022, John Room of the World Bank demonstrated to us exactly how to put our technique to use powerfully. I ran a workshop on the ABT in Nepal. All morning long, John was asking some of the toughest questions I've ever gotten. But at lunch, he explained that he wasn't being skeptical, just wanting to make sure how to use the ABT. A few weeks later, I saw what he meant as he put it immediately to use during a site visit to the Jamuna River in Bangladesh. The ABT consists of 3 parts: setup, problem, solution, meaning the activities being taken to address the problem. For the Jamuna River, John presented a couple of key details. In his first piece of setup information, he gives some initial idea of why this project is so important.
The first thing that strikes me is the magnitude and scale of this river.
In his second piece of setup, he addresses what's at stake by projecting towards the future.
The second thing that's clear is the huge opportunity to reap economic benefits from the sustainable management of this river.
He goes into a few details about how the project has so much potential. Everything is positive up until now, but then he presents his statement of the problem by dropping what we like to call the butt bomb.
But this will be a long, complex process. It will require significant investment.
That is the problem. Significant investment is needed. He goes into detail on the scale of the challenge. Then he closes with what it all means to the World Bank.
Therefore, from the World Bank's perspective, we're very proud to be involved in starting on this journey through a first project that will be one of many in a series that will help develop the Jamuna in a way that can deliver the potential that it has to offer. Thank you.
So to review, looking at his script, he gave his setup, then stated the problem, then moved on to the solution. This is the structure of the ABT, plain and simple. Think about what you do when you compress computer files. You might take a 16 megabyte file and compress it down into 2 megabytes for emailing. This is the same thing the ABT helps you do in taking a large, complicated project and compressing the core of it down to convey the essence of what is being worked on. And now 3 questions for John Room himself.
The value of the ABT is that it gives you a framework to think about how to clearly communicate to a wide audience about what we're doing. We've used the ABT in 2 ways. One is to communicate through video and written communication to a wide range of audiences, key messages of what we're doing in order to get their buy-in to the direction we're going in. Secondly, within our management team, we have used this as a framework to distill what is most important in terms of our strategic direction, and hence to coalesce the senior management team around that management direction and messaging. The World Bank's mission is to eliminate extreme poverty and reduce inequality in a sustainable way. This requires interventions across multiple sectors in a coordinated way and bringing a large number of stakeholders behind these initiatives. But with a lot of smart people working in this area from a lot of different disciplines, this messaging can often get confused. Therefore, it's important to have a framework that pulls together this messaging that allows the different stakeholders to align behind the visions and the directions and the strategies in which we're going. And the ABT gives us a framework that allows us to do this.
Okie dokie. So that is the basics there. And let me say a few words now, intro for Devo. And so what we're going to do is, unfortunately, I got to start getting prepped for this session we've got at the top of the hour with Emory University Medical School. So I'm going to have to take off in a few minutes and going to be handing it over to Devo Brown, who's a part of our group. First thing to be aware of is that there's a lot to this ABT stuff, and we're still figuring it out as we go along. This is a brand new tool that we've developed over the past really intensely last 3 years, as I say. And month by month, we're coming up with new features of it and realizing how it applies to this and that. So eventually, Devo will have you ask questions, things like that. If you hit on a question that he's only been with us for a year, so there may be a few things he can't answer. If that is the case, we'll be doing this session again at 5 o'clock our time, and I can start by addressing anything that comes up like that that's not completely clear. But yeah, let me tell you a little bit about, so I moved here 16 years ago to Malibu, California. I moved here because I surf so much and it's a great location. And they have this ongoing issue here where they've passed laws here about the light usage and things like that. That's what Devo is going to talk to you about. And about a year ago, so much of the agenda that I'm working on is my deep-seated belief that the heavy-duty science world and all these technical worlds, they need to develop a closer partnership and even respect for non-academics. And there's just too much of academics kind of dominating things, when in fact the journey that I've been on has taught me that the more you get into higher education, the more you pack information in your brain, the more impaired you become as a communicator. And so they aren't the best communicators, and the best communicators are really in the business world more than anything else. But more importantly, it tends to be non-academics have got a better grasp intuitively on communication. As a result, I've slowly but surely put together this group in which our business expert, Park Howell, doesn't have any graduate degrees. We've got Brian Palermo does improv. He's an actor, and same thing, no graduate degrees. And so at the core of it all are these 3 people that work with me now on a weekly basis. And the first one is Matt, who you met there briefly. I recruited him about 5 years ago. And then when the pandemic began, we started this course. He began working with me on a daily basis in all 37 rounds of the course that we've done. And he's gotten such a deep understanding of it that in the past year, he's really kind of risen all the way up to being a co-instructor with me. We've now got him teaching. workshops and rounds of the course himself. He really gets it very deeply. And again, it's not about having advanced degrees. He works now with physicists and epidemiologists and biochemists, things like that. And he can talk to them about the structure stuff that they have trouble seeing when you get so deep into the weeds when you work on these topics. So he's been great. And then at the beginning of this year, we realized that we needed to add on a couple more positions, people that we do a separate thing with the course called working circles, where people do half-hour sessions to work on their narrative, and they have 4 other people from the course with them that are also taking it, and they use the tools. And we realized that we needed like a quality control person in each of those sessions. And the term that we came up for that person is a structuralist, who just kind of oversees them. And we've ended up with 2 folks that fit that role. First of whom is Ayla Fox, and she actually has undergraduate degree in conservation biology and nature photography, but more importantly, works in construction a lot. And she has her own company doing sort of water landscaping, doing streams and ponds and things like that for big fancy homes, and sort of works with blue collar crews day in and day out, and is a great communicator, I think partly as a result of working with such average folks like that. She gets it on this stuff. So she's been working with us for several years, and she was the first structuralist. And then the second structuralist was about a year ago right now. I adopted a dog, and within a few days, the dog ran through the screen door at my house, and I ended up hiring a carpenter who turned out to be Devo here. And the first day when he came to fix this screen door, we began talking, and he began telling me that he's to some extent a word nerd. He's always kind of had a fondness for language and things like that. I gave him a copy of the narrative gym book, and he came back the next day to finish the screen door and said he'd read it twice the night before, loved it, and just instantly took to the ABT structure. And at a very deep and intuitive way, he works a lot. He'll tell you a little bit about his background, but he works with counseling groups and that sort of stuff, with rehab programs. And so it's got really great communication skills. And so Devo and Ayla have now become these 2 specialists, are structuralists, and they work on the practical side of everything. And then last but not least is that he's been a resident here for a long time, and he's got a specific knowledge of this issue. So Devo, you there? You want to take it over on that, and you can sort of continue the intro from there?
I can. As a matter of fact, thanks, Randy. Appreciate it. And hello, everybody. I am Devo, the ditch digger.
That's my term.
Yeah, that's Randy's term. It's just a nickname that we've given each other. Randy's given to us. The idea being that that we're not PhDs, that we're not. He is, but we're not, and none of us are have graduate degrees or even well, I guess we have some minor degrees, but in any kind of communications, it's just simply who we are. We're the types of people that have decided to study communication the way we do, and it's sort of more intuitive than anything else. If I can, let me share my screen. Would that be okay?
Yeah, of course.
Take it away. And don't forget to check Sure Sound.
I'm coming back this way. Check Sure Sound.
Yeah, share sound. Right.
Oh, share sound. I apologize.
Right. Yeah. I thought you said sure sound.
That sure sounds good to me.
Sure sounds
right.
good.
Let's go with this. And this is us. Cannot see it. There we go. So this is us. And speaking with you, DarkSky International, you guys know who you are. And let me kind of advance this a little bit here. How do I get this out of my way? Can you see me on the far right, by the way? Is that blocked on my?
Yeah, we can see you. No problem.
Oh, okay.
Perfect.
On my screen, I have something else, but that's okay. So this is our team, as Dr. Randy Olson mentioned to you, the 4 of us. I'm the guy on the far right. I don't want to say the better looking guy, but certainly the one with the snazziest Hawaiian shirt, which is my sort of thing. But tell you what we got is, as I was thinking, we're going to call this introducing your ABT framework team member. And today it's me. I started life as a poor guy with a mullet some time ago in my teenage years, probably before they were even popular. And I was always a slightly different guy, but I always had about 6 trillion friends, even though I really didn't seem to think like I had anything going. I wasn't the smartest guy necessarily in the group. I didn't have big plans for college, which I didn't do. My father offered me a great college education. I said, no, thanks. I'm going to go in the military instead, which is just what I did. And that's me looking pretty cool in my military deal. This was my first introduction to the quality of communication being the quality of your life. And it truly was. It was the way that I interacted with people and the depth and the value with which I had those interactions that allowed me to propel myself very well. Even though I had a certain problem with authority, in fact, I would call it a significant problem with authority, I managed to excel very well in the Army based on my ability to work with other people and my communication skills. Here's some of my other cohorts. We got into fun and interesting things. Yes, those are booby traps. And things just got interesting. But when I got out, I kind of had a more of an adventurous spirit, if you will, and wound up becoming a little bit more of a motorcycling enthusiast. But some of the things that had happened to me in my earlier life, not to exclude the military, led to some other problems, depression, some substance abuse, and some other things like this. These were the more nefarious people in the motorcycling world. And I hit a bottom with all of that. And what wound up happening is I found a couple of really, really great mentors that that began to help counseling me. And this turned me onto the idea of counseling. So I began to work with other people. And as a matter of fact, this particular picture is after the turnaround. And that guy next to me is one of my clients. I started a private counseling system, if you will, working with people with the same sort of issues that I had. And once again, the communications came in really, really handy with that. And it began to develop, especially under the care and tutelage of the mentors that I had. I also had part of my turnaround turned into a bit of an athlete. I got into bodybuilding and several different types of athletics, surfing not being the least of them. I did some big wave surfing myself, and triathlon, all sorts of other different adventurous things. But what I really began to appreciate was I grew an appreciation for the outdoors. And that's what the adventurous lifestyle did for me. As I continued on, I wound up getting into being a musician, and that turned into something that was pretty amazing. What I noticed is that usually within the first 3 months of doing anything, any job that I get, I'm the supervisor. Any place that I go, I wind up instantly becoming very good at it. And it's just something, it's a knack that I have. And I don't mean pretty good, I mean very good. Like I really do become the supervisor. I bought that drum kit. And then 3 months later, I was in a working band, and we were touring within 6 months. And it was just sort of one of those things that just sort of happened. And you can see the microphone in my face. Once again, the communication, the ability to interact, the ability to interact with groups turned into me being the front man for the band, even from behind the drum kit, which was interesting enough in and of itself. As I continued on, I started doing some nightclub entertainment work, started doing some DJ work. There's a giant stack of amplifiers and speakers underneath me. That jump is probably about 16 feet off the ground. I had a really great time with that. Once again, the ability to interact with crowds, the ability to interact with people, and the ability to bring out the best in the people around me. What wound up happening is that company took off, and it was just a few dozen DJs in the San Diego area. It turned into an international entertainment company within a couple of years. I wound up becoming a senior vice president in that corporation. Once again, no degree. Not only do I not have a degree, I quit school in 11th grade. So the idea behind all of this is that the ABT doesn't necessarily take a doctorate degree or even a degree at all to understand. It's the basic building blocks of communication. My athletics career got off a little bit better, and not unlike Dr. Randy Olson, I like to surf big waves too. And in 1998, the El Nino storms came through Southern California, and I paddled into some 20-foot waves. It was the most amazing situation that had ever happened in my life. And I decided, well, if I can do that, I can do anything. So I'm going to follow that one dream that I have never followed before. And I'm going to go to Hollywood and become a movie star. And this is my first headshot. In 1998, I moved to Hollywood, moved into a little $300 a month bachelor place with a shared bathroom down the hall. And I actually enjoyed a little bit of success. This was one of the films I got into. I'm the angry looking desperado on the far right. You may recognize some of the other guys on my left. That's A. Martinez and a couple of other various sundry people that are character actors that are very well known in Hollywood. And this was a great time for me. What this got me is it connected me with some people in Malibu. And I wound up moving to Malibu. This was what really was fabulous for me. It was probably around 2003, 2004. Couldn't really afford one of those wonderful $20 million beachfront homes that you hear about in Malibu all the time. But what I discovered was the other Malibu. The other Malibu is the rural Malibu. Malibu is 27 miles long, and it's beautiful scenic beauty. And they're not kidding when they say scenic beauty, because right up against the beach, that's where all of those big McMansions are with all of that money and all of that that star power and all that fame and stuff. But just a mile the other direction, a mile inland, you'll discover all of the canyons of Malibu, and they're infamous the world over. All of the Ferrari clubs and all of the sport bike clubs and all the guys, bicyclists, everybody who loves the rural environment in all of Los Angeles and Ventura counties, they all come to the canyons of Malibu. And I got this tiny little 700 square foot guest house. It was fabulous. And one of my first really truly amazing and yet rustic homes that I lived in. And it was fabulous. And at night, what I noticed was it's dark. It was really dark. There was no lights from the city. It was quiet. It was fantastic. I fell in love with the place. It was beautiful and was amazing. As I got to meet some of my other neighbors in the area, in the canyons, come to find out they all appreciated the dark as well. And we appreciated the sky. Not the first thing that struck me was the amazing stars in the sky. And it just was amazing. You could actually see the Milky Way, even though we were still in Los Angeles County. It was pretty amazing. But not long after that, this is where the story gets interesting. And this is where I sort of became I don't know if I want to say militant, but I certainly became involved and excited about the idea of maintaining the beauty of dark skies. We had a neighbor move in, as often happens in Malibu. People come in from out of state, come from other areas, and they bring their habits and their thoughts and their culture with them. Apparently, this is somebody from the East Coast, and they built a giant home out in the middle of these canyons. He bought up about 25 acres. And he built what essentially amounted to a compound with giant compound lights. And what he did is he put up this sort of giant security lighting system, and it filled the entire canyon with light. And it was unmistakable and unbelievable, but it felt like we were right back in the middle of the city. Everything changed. Not only did it change at night, it changed during the day. The behavior of the animals changed, the behavior of the wildlife, everything changed. And many of my neighbors got really, really upset with this guy. And this is kind of where the communications part kind of comes into play here. They went after him. We didn't use, we didn't know anything about dark skies, and I didn't know if, I don't know if your organization was even really active in the Southern California area at that time, but I do know that my neighbors were very active about their opinion, and that is our beauty, our love of the beauty of the area. And what wound up happening is some of them approached him, not unkindly, and it took about 2 years to finally convince this guy that what he was doing was wrong. But the first couple of years, they just went after him and they pounded after him, and they just, people were sending him letters. They were going up to his house, and they would see him in town at the stores, and they would just get after him in a very, very negative way, in a very, very pushy sort of way. And what wound up happening is a couple of neighbors approached him much more gently. And what they did is they wound up finding some common ground with the guy. One of them actually came from the East Coast in the same general area where he came from. And they approached him a little bit more gently. And as they did, they began to share with him this, since we're friends now, this is what we don't like about the idea with the lighting. This is what it kind of causes. And this is the ramifications in the last couple of years from your lighting being on every night. And they shared this stuff with him a little more intimately, a little more comfortably, but definitely succinctly and directly. And what wound up happening is finally, he changed his lighting. He went to motion type lighting, security around the immediate area around the house. He took off all of the perimeter lighting, and the home once again, or should I say the area that the home is in, once again became a comfortable oasis for the wilderness that it was supposed to be, which was fabulous. And what's interesting is since then, Malibu has created their own dark sky ordinance, and we have a dark sky ordinance in Malibu. My lovely wife works for the city of Malibu, and she was actually part of the people who were, well, at least on an administrative level, who helped the dark sky ordinance come to be in our city. And it's fabulous. There's been a lot of pushback. A lot of the interesting parts here have been about some of the businesses, the local businesses down on Pacific Coast Highway, pushing back a little bit on the light. What is it? I forget the term. The overshadow of the light, and the light bleed over, if you will. And there's been some other things, but they're starting to work it out. They're finding ways to find compromises. And what's happening is Malibu has definitely been embracing the idea of the dark sky ordinance, and we love it. It's been fantastic. And so far, so good on that. So you guys have been pretty fabulous for us. I know that since the ordinance has been up, that at least some folks from your groups and other groups like yours have come in to help some of the people in the city, and it's been really, really welcome. And we've really appreciated and enjoyed it. So The reason I've told you so much about myself, though, is I just want to let you know that this really isn't, as Randy said, this isn't for PhDs. The idea of how the ABT works. It's not a deep and necessarily complex type of formula. What it really is it's a way of advancing the narrative that has universal application. And the idea is that if I can do it, anyone can do it. The ABT is for anyone. And it absolutely is incredibly effective. We already talked about the and, but, and therefore this is the basic structure. Here's the thing, when we're working with a group, we don't really know too much about the content. In fact, it's better if we don't know about the content. This is what we found is that people who are really, really part of your group and they understand what you're doing and they understand what's happening with you, they're very, very apprised of the problems. So the problems are very forefront in their mind. But when it comes to creating a narrative, which is solving that problem, that's basically what a narrative is solving a problem. When it comes to solving the problem, you have to advance that narrative. And the idea is you have to create a certain amount of agreement first, and that's the and. Then the but comes in, and therefore. These are all form. This is how we put together the narrative that can be a compelling way of transducing the answer to other people. The form, well, that's up to you. That's up to the group itself. That's you guys. You create all the content. We just show you how to put it together. So the and, but, the and. Here's how it works. The and is the agreement. This is what I talked about with my experience with my neighbor. We had to create agreement with this guy before we would get anywhere with him, before we would get anywhere toward advancing the narrative, which means getting rid of the problem, which is getting him to calm his lighting down for this giant canyon that he had now ruined and didn't even really realize he had done it. But once we established some agreement with him, we could show him the contradiction. We could let him know, look, this is where the problem is. This is where we all love this thing, but here's where the problem is. And the therefore is the consequence. This is what happens if we take care of the contradiction. It should be obvious by the time you get there. If we build a good ABT, it should be obvious that by the time we get to the therefore, the solving of the problem should already be obvious to whoever's reading it. So this is the ABT has been in everything that you've ever noted. This way of propelling the narrative forward. Newspapers, articles, storytelling presentations, even comedy, television, all of it. It's been there the whole time. This wasn't invented by Dr. Olson. This was discovered. This is an age-old way of telling stories. This is how we have told really, really good stories. And all the good stories you've ever noted, all the good comedy, all the good books you've ever written, all the good movies you've ever watched, they all had this very same basic plot, this very same basic arc, if you will. Agreement, then the contradiction, and then the consequence. What this all has to do with is the problem solution dynamic. Here's kind of how the way it works. Everybody on the screen that I saw, and by the way, there's a whole bunch of you, and I think that's really fabulous that there's so many people who are active in the Dark Sky movement, because it's, like I said, something very close and personal to my heart. But you guys are all the inner circle. All of you know what the problems are. All of you know what some of the solutions are, and all of you are working together to create more solutions and to be able to spread the news of this and to be able to spread the positive narrative that is solving this problem. That's the inner circle. You guys know everything about you. Here's the thing. The outer circle is everybody else in the world. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here to help you with. Your inner circle, you don't need to tell anybody, you don't need to create any sort of compelling narrative with anybody who's in your inner circle, because you guys already understand the problem. It's and. If you want to share information within each other, all you have to do is lay it all out. And this, and this, and this, and this problem, and then this happens, and this happens, and this happens, and you all immediately get it. You're all here because you're all in that same inner circle. That inner circle is probably a little bit smaller than you might think. It almost always is for most groups who are trying to get something done. The outer circle, not quite so easy. You have to be able to provide a compelling narrative for them. And the first thing that you have to get with somebody who's not in your group, who doesn't already agree with you, doesn't already believe and understand the way that you do, is you have to find some agreement. That's what the ABT is for, the and, but, and therefore. So the primary level of what you do is just simply and, but, and therefore. That's it. When you can make up an ABT, and I'm going to ask you to do that here in just a couple of minutes. You can do it on the fly in just a second. Okay, it's like this and this, but that, therefore this. So it's this and this, which is the way things are now, and but that's our problem, and therefore here's our solution. It's really, really simple. Now, in our secondary level of our course, there's a whole lot more elements. There's lots of other things that are part of that, and that's what we're going to show you, should you decide to come with us on something to go a little bit deeper with that, or any organization that does. That template is just an extrapolation of that. Earth is basically how it is now, and the heaven is how good it could be. So this is how good it could be, or this is how good it is. And if we do this, then it could get this good. But the hell is our problem. Therefore, here's the action. This is the action we want to take. This is the way a good compelling narrative could be created for you guys in Dark Skies. Now, it just so happens, we took a look at your website and, you know, it was pretty amazing, but right on that first page on our strategy, you guys actually put together something that looks very much like the structure of an ABT. It was pretty amazing. I was actually quite impressed. Here, this is how we broke it down. Now, what we do normally is the and, but, and therefore areas. The and, we put it in blue, the but, which is the problem. So we like to have it in red, so it kind of jumps out. And then therefore is the green for action. So that's the part that's in green. This is actually taken directly from your website. Okay. So it talks about artificial light has revolutionized the way we live outdoors. And what you're doing is you're creating agreement right there. It's fabulous. It's perfect. For anybody who's not in your inner circle, who doesn't already believe the way you believe, this is great because you're already creating an agreement with them. But it comes at a price. And your description of the problem is really, really good here. It's not overkill, but it's good and it's succinct and it's actually definite and it's got really, really good points in it. So the green part is simply how you're talking about you guys want to be the part of the solution and you have tools for the solution. It's great. The only thing that I came up with on this, that when we were looking at it, Matt and I were taking a look at it, the only thing we could see is maybe just a little bit more heaven. After the part in blue there where it says outdoors at night, you could probably put something along the lines of, and if we can do this, then we can do that. This is the part where you guys bring the content. We only want to work with the form, but this is where we would suggest more content. So we would ask you guys, if we worked with you on this, we would have to ask you, hey, what's the possibilities? How much better could it get if we do utilize some of the solutions that are working with the Dark Sky movement? And that's what we came up with that. And with that, what I wanted to ask is, are there any questions? Let me pull this off.
Well, thank you so much, Devo. It's really, really helpful to see these local and actually examples from our own website. So we really appreciate you taking the time to do a deep dive and for all the work that you've done in Malibu as well. Really cool to have you on the dark side. You're a powerful ally.
And Devo, you can also go ahead and stop sharing too. There you go.
I was trying to find the button. First time I've done that.
Great. Well, it looks like Eileen has popped in with a question. How do you amplify the message for how unacceptable this issue is?
Well, that's excellent. It's a really, really good question, because this is exactly one of the principles that we work with is to amplify the pain. This is one of the things that one of our affiliates, one of the 20 really, really great people that work with us on a regular basis has come up with, is you have to amplify the pain. If you don't amplify it, one of the things that we talk about sometimes, this is one of the other fellows, is nobody buys a solution without a problem. So I'm sure you guys have run into at least a little bit of this, where people look at the problem with Dark Skies as being a small problem. This is a minor problem. We have real issues in the world today. I personally have real problems in my life. Why do I even care about this? And this is something I know you've run up against, because there's a certain amount of people. Obviously, there's plenty of people who don't really care because this problem is huge. When it comes to amplifying the pain, this is the part where, when we work with our working circles, we get with you. This is the kind of thing that we drill down on with you. So you tell me, what is the way that we could make this more difficult? How could we bring out the difficulty with just the average person? How do we point out to the average person that this is a problem? Some of the stuff that was on your website I thought was actually quite good. But when it comes to amplifying the problem, what you have to do is you have to make it worse. You have to show them where this affects them. And that's the part where the ABT comes into play. Probably the most important thing to think about this, though, when we consider, and this is the one thing we really haven't hit on since we've been talking about the ABT today, and that is the singular narrative. There's one problem. This is what the ABT is really good about working with, is the singular narrative, the singular problem. What is the one thing we want to fix right now? We address each problem as it is individually. So what I would suggest is, what's the worst thing? What's the worst part of the Dark Skies problem, if you will?
Yeah, there are quite a few I can think of. So okay. I think we have some ammo to
okay. Well, that's just it. The way of creating the form for that ammo, that's what the ABT is all about.
Yeah. I'm going to use my host privileges because I actually have a question for you, Devo. I feel like a lot of us are asked to give presentations about this subject, right? And a lot of the presentations are, potentially 45 minutes, 1 hour long. Like, do you have a suggestion for how to apply this framework to a presentation that is that length, right? Do you spend the first third talking about the ands and then the next third going to the but and then the next third going to the therefore? Or do you kind of like do one of those ABTs and then one of the ABTs and one of the ABTs? Like, what's the best way to structure it for like a longer presentation?
Excellent question. One of the questions we often get, especially from the academics, is, okay, so this is all great. You want me to create a 1-sentence ABT, which we all can do in a minute. But how do I apply that if I've got to write a 9-page proposal? What if I'm trying to get money from a particular agency? Okay, and they want fact after fact cited. How do I not get into the rut of and this and this and this and this, and actually hit them with the and, but, and therefore? Well, the best answer that we normally give is intuition. The intuition has to be developed, and the way you develop intuition with any kind of intellectual or emotional pursuit like this is through repetition. And one of our basic edicts is simplicity plus repetition equals intuition. So it would be the simplicity of practicing the idea of ABT over and over and over again. A lot of people have it already. In fact, some of you already have a really good idea. You can look at a proposal, you can look at a 10-minute speech, you can get a 45-minute speech, and you can feel in your gut already, as a gut punch, or it's like, it drags. You may not know how or why, you can't point specifically to it, but it does. For the rest of us, there's certainly cues that we can find to point at what are the ways that we can bring it out and make it more interesting. Best I can tell you is that it's been used successfully both ways. I don't know if you remember, there was a speech that Oprah Winfrey gave at the Golden Globes when she got her Lifetime Achievement Award. And she used it as a platform for racial inequality, for delivering a message about racial inequality. It was hailed as probably one of the best speeches ever given. And it really was amazing. I would probably hold it at least in the same, maybe not as the same quality, and definitely not with the same impact as the I Have a Dream speech with Dr. Martin Luther King. But it was in that same, it can be in the same conversation. It was really that well crafted. In that particular speech, what she did was utilized 3 separate blocks, and she used chunks, and she created an ABT format in each one. And it was pretty amazing. And what we called it was nested ABTs. This was the term that Randy gave to it. And it was each punch that she wanted to make, each point that she wanted to make, she created a sort of an ABT for it. Now they were longer. It wasn't just like a single sentence ABT and then another single sentence ABT and then boom, she's out. It was a couple of sentences of build up an agreement and then bang, hit you with the contradiction, and then a couple of more sentences of therefore and of hope, giving some hope and giving a little bit of possibility, which is a really good format because you don't want to just beat people up with the problem. A lot of environmentalists over the years, this is what has, Randy pointed this out, I wholeheartedly agree. A lot of the problem that has plagued the environmental movements of all their various types, if you will, has been beating everybody up with the problem. They come out strong. Look, this is what's wrong, and this is what's wrong, and you idiots are ruining the environment, you're ruining the world, and we're all going to die, and it's your fault. And if you don't get on board with us, you're going to kill everybody. And it's like, and what do you do? This is real simple psychology. I was one of the other things that in addition to my private counseling practice, I was the spiritual counseling director at Mental Health Services, New Seasons Mental Health Services here in Port Hueneme. And one of the things I used to teach people constantly when they were trying to share what they were sharing, you can't come up and push somebody. If you put your finger in someone's chest, our natural proclivity is going to be to push back. If you come on verbally the same way, their natural proclivity, their natural defense is to be defensive. Their natural response will be to be defensive. And that just makes perfect sense. But if you create an agreement with somebody, like say, take for instance, the fellow that we were talking about in my neighbor, at first he pushed back, but when we made some agreement with the guy, then we made some headway with the guy. And then we were able to share with him our problem. My problem became our problem when we had a bit of agreement first. So when it comes to a longer topic like that, I would suggest doing it in sort of like pieces and chunks and see how it sounds to you. If it hits your gut and you go, yeah, that's right, then you know you've done it the right way. Or you could simply go along with the the and all the way to the beginning and then hit a big bunch of problem and then give them a big bunch of hope at the end, that could work just as well, depending on how well you construct it.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Devo. I think that's always one of my main issues is like, how do I keep people engaged for such a long period of time and not cause any resistance? But that's one of the great things about this issue is that there is so much agreement about the stars and the night sky and how we can all kind of come together around that. So I love that idea of starting with that.
If you want to, if you ever are putting something together and you would like us to take a quick look at it, you can send it to Matt or to Randy or to myself, but just send it, put it along in an email and just say, could you take a quick look at this? We'd be happy to do that.
Well, thank you. And I have one final question as we have one minute left. I know we'll get this question, but will it be possible to get any copies of the slides so we can go back and kind of reference that main framework?
Yeah, you know what? Go ahead and send an email to Matt and to Randy. And I don't think there should be too much problem with that.
Great.
But to be honest with you, it's probably going to be a little bit out of context. And we've done this before where we sent the slides out and it kind of it just lacked a lot of the bang because really mostly what was happening was those were just pictures that were helping the descriptions that Randy was giving and that I was giving also. Here's the idea is that you can really get everything you want when it comes to the ABT out of less than 100 pages. And that is the narrative gem. And there are
Yep. 9
narrative gem books, but the original one, the narrative gem or the narrative gem for science, which is the most recent one, is probably the best book. I would suggest to you that's where all the answers lie. That's where the real meat and potatoes of all of this is. And after that, it's all about repetition. It's all about practice.
Yes. Well, I'm sure some of us would like the mullet photo, but we will all get opportunities to practice this great framework. So I would like to thank Devo. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Matthew, for your really helpful comments in the chat. And thanks to Randy, even though he's not here. It's such an honor to meet with you. You all came so highly recommended and are well known around the world. So thank you for taking the time to share with us here today. And I know we will all be stronger communicators from this. So I will honor your time and wrap this up. Devo, Matthew, do you guys have any final words you'd like to share before we end this session?
Just a big thank you, big gratitude to you guys for giving us your time and sharing it with us and allowing us to spread this message. When Matthew said he feels like he's changing the world through this one day at a time. We say that at almost every meeting. We really believe that. Yeah, I'm a little bit of a crusader, and I'm definitely, as part of being an adventurist, I'm also just a little bit of a crusader. And everything I do, I want it to have some meaning. I want it to have a purpose. And that's why I've done everything I ever wanted to do in my life. I just went out and did it. And that's where this very sordid career and life has come from. But what it really amounts to is doing things that make a difference. And you guys are really doing that. So we really appreciate what you've done and the fact that you've taken time out of your day to share with us and let us share with you what we really think is a world-changing message, along with your world-changing message. So thanks very much.
Yes, thank you so much. And we will see y'all back here at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And again, a huge thank you. You can see in the chat many thank yous. We are all honored for your time and information, and I look forward to seeing you later.